It was very nice. So yeah, it was lovely. So we know what it entails, and it is quite an extensive meal.
Mhm.
And we enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. Very nice. Well, we're going to look today at a very well-known Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. It's the first Mishnah of chapter 4. And it's one that, if people don't know in its entirety, often maybe remember a quotation from a youth group event, or from being taught in a sermon, or and taking it in a class, because it's a very pithy Mishnah. It's a very pithy teaching, and also one that has a lot of wisdom in it, and kind of fundamental wisdom. So it's also kind of a return to a more broad speaking teaching, as opposed to the last one at the end of chapter 3, or the last two at the end of chapter 3, that were much more refined and specific, if you remember, right? These different values, that if you don't have this, if you don't fulfill this value, you can't have this one, and vice versa, right? And much more intricate. And this one we're exploring 4 different values, and we are, in exploring them, we are making some pretty big statements. So, everyone can see the text?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay, great. Okay, so can I move this over here? I can, yeah, okay. So, I broke it up into boxes for each teaching, kind of, it's a helpful tool, especially when we're beginning our learning, but even beyond that, like, it's good to sometimes outline a teaching to really kind of understand what statements are referring to each other, and when you go into a different section, right? So Ben Zoma Omer. So Ben Zoma teaches, Ezehu Hacham, who is wise? Halomed Mikol Adam, one who learns from every person. Shnei Amar, as it is written in Psalm 119, Mikol Melamde Hiskalti Ki Edotecha Sicha Li. And this is a quote from Psalm 119. From all who taught me have I gained understanding. For your testimonies, or decrees is how it's often understood, are my study. So this is one of the very often quoted parts of the Mishnah, and you might even see it on T-shirts, right? Who is wise? One who learns from every person, because it's a great kind of big teaching, and it's a nice universal kind of teaching, hard to argue with, right?
Right.
So it's a great big one, but it's interestingly, let's contrast that to the holiday of Passover, because there are a couple of similarities I wanted to point out just by happenstance that were on this Mishnah, and to think about it in comparison to the Haggadah, or the Haggadah, which is the book that we use, or the prayer book that we use on the Seder, or at the Seder. And Haggadah means the telling, really. So it's the telling of the story of Passover, which has a number of rituals and things intertwined in it. And the number 4 is very important in the Haggadah, right? In the telling, the number 4 is very prominent as a presence. Number 1, the meal that happens has 4 cups of wine that we are supposed to drink over the course of the meal. Right? So they're the arba kosot, the 4 cups of wine. That's number one. The number 2 thing is that one of the oldest liturgical pieces in the Haggadah are the arba kashiot, or the 4 questions. And those go all the way back, in fact, to when the temple still stood. So those 4 questions, which are over probably 2,000 years old, go back a long, long way. And they are a central piece around which we've built more and more, right? That's kind of like, I think, one of the first liturgical pieces that we have. And then we have other ones that we've since added on to it. So we have the 4 cups of wine, we have the 4 questions, and we have the 4 children. And so there's a piece also that takes different expressions in the Torah about the first night of Passover and of telling it to your children, and makes them up as if they're addressing 4 different types of learner, or 4 different types of children. Okay? And they are the wise, the wicked, the innocent, and the one who does not know how to ask. Right, so those are the 4 children. So we see the number 4, at least 3, kind of in 3 major ways throughout the Seder night, okay, in the Haggadah. And the first thing that piqued my interest in this was to notice that in this teaching of Ben Zoma, there are you can, not counting the top box, right, because that's just the beginning of his teaching, but if we count the boxes underneath it, or at least the levels, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of teaching that Ben Zoma offers. So I think that's an interesting parallel. It's certainly, I don't know if there's much hay to make there, but there's at least a beginning. There's at least a beginning, not just in the happenstance that it has 4 sections and the number 4 is big in the Haggadah, but also in how it opens. And how does this teaching relate to the 4 children, where we have, as I said, we have the wise child. Of course, we'd want to learn from the wise child. And the innocent child, we'd want to learn from the innocent child. And even perhaps from the child who doesn't know how to ask. But the wicked child, how do we learn from the wicked child? And I think that's an interesting question. And then to get into, how do these other teachings, if they do, line up or not line up with the Haggadah and the Passover night? I don't know how far we're going to get, but I thought it'd be interesting to start. So I think what we should do, though, is go through the whole teaching first and then come back to explore that, okay? And it'll become more clear as when we revisit, it'll become a little bit more clear. So Ben Zoma teaches, who is a wise? One who learns from every person, as it is written, right? From all who taught me have I gained understanding. Mikol milamdei hiskalti. From all my teachers I've gained enlightenment. Ki edotecha sichali. Now this is an interesting translation. If I were going to go more literal, I would say, for your testimonies, God, sichali, speak to me, or in conversation with me. Lisoach is to be in conversation or meditation, right? But here we have Are My Study. Which is just a little different, right? Okay, so that's who is wise. Who is mighty? Who is mighty? Ezahu Gibor, who is mighty? Hakovesh et Yitzro, one who subdues his or her material inclination. And then it quotes Proverbs. Tov erech apayim gibor, umishel berucho meloched ir. It's better to be forbearing than to be mighty, and to rule over his own spirit from conquering a city. Right. So where is that might directed in this teaching? When Ben Zoma asks who is mighty, he is stressing what kind of might.
Control over self.
Right, control over self, using your power to change yourself,
Right.
rather than to change other people.
Right.
Okay, so the first teaching, right, one who learns from all people is someone who is looking outward to gain knowledge. The second, the second stage is to be mighty, is to take perhaps that knowledge and use it to not control other people, but to have better control over yourself. Right?
Right.
Okay. Then we have Ezahu Ashir, who is wealthy. Hasamech bechalko, one who rejoices or is happy with their portion. Lot or portion is fine. As it is said, as it is written in Psalm 128, Yigia kapecha ki tochel ashrecha v'tov lach. You shall enjoy the fruit of your labors, or the fruit of your hand will come to you, and you will eat it. You shall be happy, and it will be good for you. And then it breaks it down a little bit further, because we have two different expressions of benefit, right? One is you will be happy, and the other is it will be good for you. And so the Rabbi Ben Zoma here wants to make some meaning out of both of those. It says, Ashrecha, you will be happy. That means in this world. The tovlach, and it shall be good for you, or you shall prosper, is in the world to come. Okay. So if you are satisfied if you're happy with what you do in this world, not only will you be fortunate in this world, but also it'll help you have a piece of the world to come. You'll have a life beyond this physical presence in this world. Okay, and the final, Ezahu mechubad, who is honored? Hamechabed et habriot, one who honors his or her fellow human beings. As it is written, as it is said, in the book of Shmuel, Aleph, the book of First Shmuel, or First Samuel, Parak Bet, Ki mechabdei achabed, uvozeh yekelu. For I honor those that honor me, or for those that honor me, I will honor. And those who spurn me will be dishonored. So honor me. So what does that say about honoring? Right? Who is honored? When it tells it, how does honor work here? I guess. How does the value of honor, how does that get spread or not spread?
Let's see. Respecting and valuing other people.
Mhm.
There's a lot of us.
Where?
On the floor. It's okay.
You have a thing.
What does it make it seem like it is? It seems like in this teaching
I see.
that honor is a transactional thing. Right? As opposed to all the other teachings, which seemed to be that you pursue these values. Well, I don't know. That's a good question, right? Maybe I'm getting too caught up in the proof text. So who is honored? One who honors their fellow human beings. I guess that's a pretty straightforward thing to do, right? If you honor other people, then you will be honored.
What you doing?
Are we good with that, or is there anybody think that there's a different way to read it? Okay. Well, here, help me out for the Seder. I want to get into one question, which has to do with, if we look at the very first teaching, and maybe we'll revisit this teaching in more depth next week. But as we get ready for Seder in the Jewish homes on tomorrow night, we have this statement here. Who is wise? One who learns from every person, right? At the same time, we have in the Haggadah of Passover, the recitation or the exploration of 4 different types of children, really Jews or learners, right? There's the wise child who I don't have, see, now I didn't bring a Haggadah upstairs with me. Interestingly, the wise child says, what do these statutes and stories mean to you? I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but that's what the wise child says. And for that child, we should get into the story and kind of explain things and tell, what does it mean to me? Right, so they're seen as being wise because they are asking that question to say, what is your experience? What wisdom and knowledge and feeling do you have around this that you can share with me? Okay. The wicked child asks essentially the same question, but we presume because of the way they ask it, they are seen as to be saying, this is something that's meaningful to you and not to me. Right? They're saying, what is all this? Basically, they're saying, what does all this crap mean to you? Justify yourself, or justify why I have to sit here and go through this Seder. At least that's how the tradition sees them. You have the simple child, or the innocent child, where either because of age or intellectual capacity, you need to keep it simple, right? So you tell them the simple story. And for the child who does not know how to ask or is unable to ask, you prompt them and you help them kind of get into it in more depth, right? So these are the 4 different types of children or learners that we see the Haggadah speaks of going back a long time. So that text is probably at least 1,500 years old. I think. Somewhere around that.
Seconds.
Right? So if that's 1,500 years old, and there are children in the Haggadah that are called Rasha or wicked, how do we think we might or how do we balance this teaching of Ben Zoma, that one, to be wise, needs to learn from every person, from a teaching in the Haggadah which says this is someone who we should confront. We should tell them that this is not, that I think the actual translation is often, you should put their teeth on edge, which is, makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable maybe. But you should put their teeth on edge and tell them it's because of what God did for me when I went free from Egypt, but had you been there, you would not have been freed. Right? Which is a pretty strong statement. So how do we balance Ben Zoma's teaching of learn from everyone as the first of 4 different teachings with the Haggadah and the 4 children and one who is Rasha, one who is seen as evil or bad? How can we learn, or to take it more broadly, how can we learn from people who are bad?
How can we learn from people who are-
This is Francis.
Yay, Francis.
I learned from a bad boss how not to be a bad boss. In other words, I learned
Okay.
how not to treat people if you want to have them produce results. That's one example.
Okay. So in the Haggadah, in the Passover story, we are told to see the Rasha, the bad child, as one who sees themselves as outside of the Jewish story.
Okay.
Right? So they are presumably a Jewish child who's at the table, but is saying, this is not me, this is not for me.
Okay.
So what parallel would there be in the Christian world?
Prodigal son.
No, I don't think so, but I can't. I'm
They're
not
asking you
translating
to.
anything else.
Especially around the holiday of Easter, can you imagine a parallel where we would call a child a bad child or an evil child because of how they behaved?
It's always opt-in.
I don't
You
know.
met family gathering and your son says, I'm not
But I
coming.
don't think that there's a way that.
How if you're within it in the service and you're
Francis and Margaret, are you talking to each other or talking to the screen, to the microphone? Because I can't tell.
okay.
What?
We're talking to each other.
Okay.
We were trying to figure that one out.
I was saying, if you have a family gathering at Easter and your son or daughter who's in college says, I'm not coming, I got other things to do.
Aha. And I'm not going to go to Passover services. I mean, or to Easter services.
Right.
Right. Or
Exactly.
Yeah. That
So
would,
sorry. So I think there's a difference because Judaism, we see ourselves as a people,
Mm-hmm.
and Christianity, while there may be Christian peoples, Christians aren't a people in the same way. And so one of the things I talk about the wicked son is, I mean, as someone who I don't, has felt perhaps like all the kids at some point, as much as you may rebuke them, they're still part of the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm. They are for sure, right?
Mhm.
But we have multiple groupings here, right? Because you have faith, community of faith, you have community of identity, and you have community of family,
Mhm.
at least, right? So Hillary, right? Even if, I think even like say if we were in a Christian family, even if someone said, I don't believe anymore,
Right.
they're still going to be a part of the community, and it's still part of the family.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
Certainly part of the identity and part of the family,
Right. Yeah.
even if not part of the community of believers.
Right.
So I think you're right, Hillary. Like, right, we definitely see ourselves as different in Judaism because we don't define people as out if they don't believe. But
I mean-
here, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there is some overlap. I think, for example, my father, while he didn't have conventional faith, and everyone in his family knew it, the faith he was not conventional for was distinctly High Church Episcopalian.
It was rejecting a very specific sliver.
And not even necessarily rejecting, but I mean, again, Episcopalians, you have a wide variety of beliefs, but he definitely still showed up for the happy hours.
And his golf game didn't suffer, right?
He actually didn't play golf.
Okay.
But
I
his
know too
dad
many
did.
Episcopalians who don't play golf. It's always disillusioning to me. But here, when we talk about the Rasha on Passover, is it not someone? Could we not see that as being similar to one of a community? Is someone saying that they're outside the community of faith? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question how close we get here in the Judaism area to making faith the definer, or if it's more of a statement that I don't see myself as a part of this group, so this story doesn't apply to me anymore. So they're taking themselves out of the group, so to speak.
Right.
Okay, I think today, with your mercy, I would like to end a little bit early because Passover preparations are many,
Yes.
and I'm a bit far behind.
Right. That's fine.
That is very fine.
So I appreciate that. So we'll cut it short with this quick teaching, and I think we're actually going to revisit it next week with kind of it from a different lens.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Awesome.
Shalom.
Shalom. I hope. But Easter's not this Sunday, right? It's the follow. Is it? No, it is this Sunday.
It is
Sunday.
It's this Sunday. It
Okay.
is this Sunday. Yes.
It is this Sunday. Okay. Well, have a happy Easter.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Passover.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll. It's so funny, like to tell you just how much preparation goes into Passover. The greeting for Passover is Hag Kasher V'Sameach, right? So it's may you have a Passover that is happy and kosher,
Okay.
or appropriate, meaning like.
Right.
We hope it goes well because basically you clean your house out of
I
all
know.
its
All right.
goods, right? It's a little crazy,
Yeah.
but it's such a pervasive part that it's a part of the greeting that we give to people.
Right.
So it's a pretty funny
We're-
thing.
We're gonna find everywhere the baby stash for bagel pieces.
Exactly. Oh yeah, you can't. There's just no. There's no way around it. You always find something. Cool. Well, everybody have a great, good
Okay, well, thank
holidays,
You too. And your
and enjoy. Hopefully, we'll have sunshine and good weather.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.